What's up, Yoon-Fam? It is I,
Mark Yoon.
Welcome back to the stage of the future, eventually retold. Today's video, as we outlined yesterday, is going to be talking about crossing the sands of time, linking Soul Calibur's past to a future Soul Calibur world. Now, as I mentioned, this is not to do with that fan theory where Soul Calibur and Tekken are linked together. That theory has many flaws, and especially just linking it only to having Yoshimitsu in the game and being of the same clan, and being the same Yoshimitsu is a stretch to say the very least. I think it's something that was an afterthought that was tacked on later on, and people just ran with it like they usually do. Now that's great. We're all about lore and fantasizing about the future here on this channel. But in today's video, I want to talk about another possible future. The iteration of Soul Calibur if it lends itself into the next millennium by itself. So what would that look like? And how would we achieve that? More importantly, how would we get both in the games together? Well, that's why I talked about yesterday's opening universe of Soul Calibur, or a multiverse. Using the astral features, anything is possible, and in doing so, we can entertain ourselves as greatly and forever with any number of different variations or possibilities to any degree. So I think if we actually created a Soul Calibur future franchise, now let's not go off and say like an entire game, but it would help by dripping in characters here and there, or maybe in those characters' stories, showing little bits and pieces of the world. The possibilities are indeed endless, but how epic would it be to have Mitsurugi encounter his counterpart from the future? Is he still going to be using a sword or possibly a lightsaber type thing? I know we shouldn't actually call them lightsabers, probably like a proton blade or, phase blade, whatever you want to say, but something akin to that. We have 2B, so we know how technology is perceived by these characters, so it's not too far of a stretch to actually think that someone would return with this technology. Or even interesting enough if they got time misplaced themselves. Like, what if half of the game took place in the future and half of the game took place in the past, and we had the entire cast and roster available to us? We have the whole crew there. Taki, Cervantes, Sasalamel, who I'm sure would be feeling at home in a future world or a past world since he knows no end. Similarly with Edgemaster. What if the future and the key to defeating anything that stands in their way lies there? Now, they tried to attempt this with Soul Calibur 5 with what we call lovingly as the replacement kids. Shiba, Natsu, all them. And while you may like those characters, especially for their personalities or their playstyles, they were just implemented highly, like hastily. That's the only best way I can say it. It was very poor planning. They just were thrown in there without much backstory, and you kind of just were expected to accept them and say bye to our characters that we were playing with for the longest time. But what I'm asking for is not a replacement, but an addition. So let's go further also down this stage of history. So instead of just dealing, like I said, with someone in the next generation, how about we go 4 or 5 generations in the future? So we have characters coming back with steel swords of with mechanical inputs and lasers and guns and cannons and all kinds of things like that. Now, of course, all that would be relegated to balancing issues, so we would need sub-weapons and divisions and things of that nature and countermeasures. So all of that, withstanding, let's just talk about the lore aspect of it itself. Maybe there's a warrior that is of the same line as the Song family and the Huang family. That would sure scratch the itch of people saying, they should have gotten together. I just think there's a lot of possibilities there. And especially if we want to come up with some kind of tag game like we're talking about, instead of crossing over with another game, another franchise, expanding the lore in this franchise would lend to infinite possibilities. So not even having the future of that, what does the future of Soul Edge and Soul Calibur look like? Maybe the leader of some crazy corporate conglomerate now is in possession of Soul Calibur, and they're enslaving the world through different means than just like possessed and manifested. There's some interesting things that we could touch on there, like how will these characters that are displaced from the past or the future deal in the respective timelines of the other, their compatriots. So, if you were to think about, is Tekken the future of Soul Calibur? I would say no, but at least you can see what kind of thing that would look like. What would the future look like if Soul Calibur starts from this point and expands on? Because as we know, this timeline is rife with changes from the last, and any number of things could happen. Especially if, like, we're talking about the possibility of seeing these lineages and lines move on further down the road. Would it be a Yoshimitsu situation where we have, like, the Manji clan pretty much looking exactly the same as it does now, but with more technological, inputs? Will Mitsurugi's family still be a bunch of, warriors just traveling, trying to become stronger, or will they change? And I think a lot of these conflicts between each other will not only lend for good narrative, but it will teach them like a lot of good lessons and give them like huge character arcs we haven't seen in the past. Like perhaps Taki encounters like someone of her lineage passed down, and who's all about family or all about like protecting what's hers, and can't do anything by herself, and Taki gains some of that perspective and learns to trust some of the other characters in the Soul Calibur franchise a little bit more. We can see loners like joining together and just looking at things from a different perspective and opening up different ideas of lore within the characters themselves, and that would lend to better storytelling, because whenever a situation they're encountered, perhaps they'll go a different path than they normally would have before. Like with Mitsurugi, will he try to talk somebody down at that point, or will he go straight in fist blazing and sword slashing, the same as he's been shown to do in the past? This will also be a good escape mechanism. Like, what if Aswell is lunged into the astral fissure and he pops up in like the year like 2200 or something like that, and the technology, is well beyond what it is in the current universe, and he masters it and takes it back with him, and they got to come up with a way to stop him. I mean, there's already magic in the universe, and there is that old saying that says that mysticism and magic is, irrespectively indeterminable from technology, whether it's time displaced. So, like, if you are from the past, let's say you're somebody from the 1200s and you automatically pop up today, you're going to think, self-driving cars and touch screens and all of that stuff is magic, as opposed to the natural evolution and progression of technology. So we can have these kind of fish out of water stories where these characters who have known everything have to now like go on a new adventure and also try to absolve themselves of their own problems. Like, I mean, we're going to have like a lot of like consistency with this, with the future characters themselves. I just think it would be cool to see the interactions going on as well, and maybe they take back something, maybe they learn something, or they utilize some kind of tool or something like that. Now, the automatic pushback is going to say, no, this game takes place in the 1500s, and it needs to stay that way. Like, Soul Calibur has a very distinctive aesthetic, and we need to make sure that we protect that and preserve it at all costs. The problem with these kind of ideals is that you end up writing in circles, and unless you want a constant reboot stream because they keep telling the same stories over and over again, you're going to eventually have to push into this kind of environment. Look at Naruto. Like, they, with Naruto's son Boruto in his own series, they saw the explosion of technology and all kinds of new ways to implement jutsu in that universe. And it was awesome. I mean, like, that was one of my favorite aspects of the new series. I'm not as big of a fan as Boruto as I was of Naruto, but at least, like, we can see what the natural evolution of the technology in that universe would look like and how it would interact and play with the other characters. And that's something that I want to see similarly here. It's something that I think that they can do. Something I think that wouldn't be that hard to implement. Now, if we cross the sands of time and link these two future and past worlds together, the stage of history is still going to be eternally retold. Just now we have a future to that history. And it'll be more than just, a fan theory at this point. And maybe we can have some better explanations for things. Like maybe in the future some scientist actually figures out like what the astral fissures are and like where that chaos energy comes from and what universe it links to and how the creatures of the Soul Calibur franchise came to be and are living and existing today. Like what if we see a bunch of lizard men like walking around in suit and ties like just going to work with everybody else, or we see like the colossal race trying to, you know, I don't know, do construction work or help out with like using their abilities. I just think seeing everyone together in a future like placement would be really, really interesting and fantastical, and would expand the lore greatly and would lend to more obvious possibilities. Now, it's not saying that like we're not going to have any narrative from the future, the past, present timeline, because we'll have all those years from, you know, 1600 all the way until 2199 to talk about like what would possibly happen. Now, I don't think this will ever actually happen. I just think this would be a really cool idea, and it would be a really good way to segue into like a Soul Calibur tag type situation where we have a whole bunch of characters via Tekken Tag 2 or something like that. So with that being said, I'm going to leave the comment section up to you guys so we can discuss this further, or on the Discord where the links are in the description box. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching and for listening. I will see you tomorrow on Volume 3 of the Vocal Library. And as always, I love it. Thank you.
And thank you.